Hello gorgeous people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. It is another Alicia Dion podcast this week, which is such an exciting little venture that I have started up on this YouTube channel, and we are so excited this week to announce that I actually have a direction for this podcast. I had no idea at the beginning what I wanted this podcast to entail or what I wanted it to be a space for, and I am very happy to share that since releasing episode 2 of this podcast, I have come up with the answer. I want this podcast to be a place where you can share travel tips, travel stories, and all-round adventures, outrageous tales, and just insane, tragic, hilarious, brilliant stories from your adventures across the world. Doesn't matter, doesn't have to be directly related to travel if you don't want it to be, but just share your crazy stories with me. I've always been a person for crazy stories, and I thought it was just a really fun thing to bring into the channel. Now, speaking of travel stories, I actually put this idea out on my Instagram story, and I am so freaking excited to announce that I've already had some people write in with some incredible stories. Some of them I've read, some of them I haven't. To be honest, I kind of want to blind read them to you guys so we can react together. But there are some serious gems in there. And of course, I have some crazy stories of my own to share. If you guys want to reach out and get in touch and possibly have your story read out on the podcast, you can reach out via my email, which is helloaliciadione@gmail.com. This week, I am coming to you through something called a pop mic. One of my amazing subscribers on YouTube commented on episode 2 of the podcast, basically saying that if I was going to carry on doing the podcast, that they would suggest that I purchase one. Basically saying that, Alicia, we don't want to listen to your gross mouth and the overly pronounced P's and S's within your podcast. Just get it sorted. You know, get your setup sorted. Now, they didn't say any of this. That's just what I'm deducing from the comment. But I have taken that advice on board. I've gone out, I've bought myself a pop mic, and we're trying it out this week. How are we doing this week? How are you getting on? I feel like I am missing the craziest heat that's going on over in the UK, and I'll give you 5 guesses as to what the weather is like here in Wellington, New Zealand. If you said anything other than windy, then I don't know why. It's windy Wellington, and I am finally truly experiencing what that means. I cannot explain to you how silly I was for thinking that I had experienced true Wellington wind. I think what happened is that I really hope that you can't hear the music that the neighbours are playing right now. I am currently recording this in my wardrobe, but unfortunately I can't control what my neighbours do. But hey, keep listening to the podcast and maybe one day I'll be able to afford a detached house and then I'll have full control of my surroundings. So the other day I experienced, I don't know which story to tell first. In one of the stories I shat a brick, and in the other story I nearly got run over by a car. Let's go with the shitting a brick scenario that I have so eloquently put it. So I was at work on a random Thursday and I was in a meeting. Now, in this meeting room, let me just paint the scene for you. There are sliding glass doors into the meeting room. Opposite that wall is a window looking over the Wellington harbour and the sailing boats in the outside world. And we're on the 11th floor. So not insanely high up, but high up enough. I am sat with my back to the sliding doors, and therefore I am looking out the window, looking over the harbour. And there are some pretty high ups in this meeting. And let me make it clear, my position in this meeting is to sit down, shut up, say nothing, and be calm, okay? That is my intention going into this meeting, is to pretty much say as physically little as possible, which if you've met me is a challenge. So I was already out of my normal personality comfort zone. So I'm sat there, the meeting starts, everything's fine, and then everything around me starts to shift. The whole room starts to spin before my eyes, and my brain is telling me that I'm on a boat, and for the record, I get extremely seasick, so that's not helpful. I just on instinct grabbed the arms to the desk chair that I was sitting in, and my hands were still, so I could feel that I wasn't moving, my body wasn't moving, but my eyes and my brain were going fucking nuts all over the place. No idea what was going on. And I was like, oh my God, this must be what it's like to pass out. I am about to fully hit the deck in the middle of this meeting that I am supposed to be seen and not heard. And my brain, in its, I suppose it was a smart reaction, but equally it was just a bit erratic and panic in origin. I kid you not, you guys, I was clinging onto this chair and I just exclaimed in the middle of one of my higher up sentence across the table, nothing to do with me. I just exclaimed, why is the room moving? Just clinging to the arms of this chair and staring out the window, thinking I'm about to pass out. So first off, I was extremely embarrassed, but second off, I was planning my landing. The good news is I am tucked in, right? Like there was not a lot of space between me and the desk. Okay, so if I fall forwards, I'm just gonna smack the desk with my head, which is fine because, you know, the most important thing is that I don't inconvenience anybody. Doesn't matter if I split my head open on the table. Being a woman, you learn it's all about not inconveniencing others. Then I thought to myself, if I fall to the right or to the left, I have arms either side of me. I felt pretty tucked in, so fairly safe in that scenario. And if I go back, it's fine because it was a pretty high back chair. So I'm pretty confident that at least I can maybe keep contact with the chair when I fall unconscious in the middle of this meeting for the first time in my life. And two of the people in this meeting who were having the conversations with each other, the person who was in the middle of their sentence just turned to me and said, yep, we're moving. And I was like, I don't understand. The dialogue inside my head was 30 minutes long, but it took me 3 seconds to formulate a response. But I was just thinking, why are they okay with us moving? Why can I not feel myself moving with the rest of my body, but my eyes and my brain are screaming, why are we moving like we're on a fucking merry-go-round? The only thing I was thinking at this point, the only explanation that my brain could come up with is maybe this was an earthquake. Maybe this is what an earthquake feels like. Because even though we have been here for coming up on 6 months now, I haven't felt one. There have been a couple. Ben felt one while I was in the house with him. It was very minor, but he was lying down and I was sat in the office chair. I don't know if you guys know this or if you've experienced earthquakes yourselves, but the more of you that's touching the surface, the more likely you are, or the stronger you're going to feel an earthquake. So I didn't feel it. Ben did. So I'm still completely oblivious to what earthquakes actually feel like. At this point, I'm just trying to figure out why it feels like I'm passing out and why the people in the meeting are so unfazed by my miniature freakout and so blasé about, oh yeah, the building's moving. Just no fucking explanation. Just, that's what's happening. We can accept it. Okay, well, I'm glad you can accept it, but can someone please explain to me what the hell is going on right now? So I said, are we having an earthquake? And she said, nope, it's just the wind. The wind was swaying the building to the extent that I thought I was passing out. If you guys are listening to this from Wellington, you're probably thinking, Alicia, shut up and sit down. This is barely even a story. But it was one of the most humbling, inexplicable feelings that I've ever had, because it was something I can't relate to something else. And to not be able to process your surroundings and why something is happening is pretty terrifying, but also to have the people around you just be so calm and give you no dialogue was not helpful. But all due respect to them, they weren't being spiteful in any way. To them, it was just like, this happens every year. Why is this chick freaking out? Oh yeah, she's British. She hasn't got a clue what wind feels like. Oh my God. Anyway, I gathered my thoughts and then we had a 45-minute meeting where I had to just sit there and contemplate my behaviour this was probably the first 3 minutes of the meeting. But I did manage to pretty much keep my mouth shut for the rest of the meeting, so in some ways, mission accomplished. I then actually managed to speak to somebody else in the building in which I work, and they told me about apartment complexes in Wellington that are built on railway tracks. Railway, not in the ground. They are built on frickin' sliding parallel rails so that when the wind blows, the building can just choo-choo chug down the frickin' track and then basically bend in half in order to compensate for the Wellington wind. Tell me in what world you don't forewarn someone about those conditions when they say they're moving to Wellington. People told me about earthquakes all the time when I was moving here, and of course they told me how windy Wellington is, but not once did anybody think to tell me that if I was working in a high-rise building, that the whole building moves, and we have lights on string in our kitchen, and they swing. Like, from the chandelier, That's the level of swinging I'm talking about here. And I'm just thanking my lucky stars that the building I was in when it happened wasn't on rails, because I probably would have actually passed out from the thought of passing out after thinking that I was about to be catapulted across Wellington fucking harbour. Anyway, that was my experience of wind in Wellington. Just wind. So that's story one, where I thought I was going to pass out. And I suppose I'll also tell you the story of where I, nearly got hit by a car. To be fair, it's a slight exaggeration, but definitely the wind's fault and a phenomenon nonetheless. It's also a much shorter story, so I'll cut to the chase. I've got the bus home and I need to get off the bus. We live extremely near the water. So we have a very sandy beach, like a 60-second walk from our front door, and the wind was barreling in. This is the same day where I thought I was passing out in a meeting. So I get off the bus. I'm ready to be home. It's been a day. And as I step off the bus, the traffic around the bus just stops dead. And I think it was because they could see what was happening to the people on the street. I was one of these people. So the wind was blowing just a wall of sand down the street. I'm talking 9-10 feet high, just this moving wall straight down the road. So I am stood there and I'm looking to my right, and that's fine because the sand's coming from the other direction, and I also have a little bit of cover from the bus that hasn't pulled away yet. And then I have to make a decision. It's pitch black. And I'm realising I can either look left to see if there is a car coming in the other direction, but I will lose my vision forever because my eyeballs will be replaced with sand, or I can just run and pray. Now, when I say the traffic stopped, the car was coming up behind the bus and he was ready to take it, and he stopped dead. Because he knew that people coming off that bus were screwed. He knew that we were absolutely screwed. So I made a choice to very quickly snap my head to the left and back. I saw absolutely no cars in sight. I wouldn't say that it was safe crossing, but I ran for my life and I made it. And if the driver of the car that stopped dead is listening to this podcast and you know who you are, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate so much that you just stopped and gave the people getting off that bus space, because it was a little bit terrifying. Not as terrifying as nearly passing out in a meeting because it was windy, but a little bit terrifying nonetheless. And they are my two little stories for you this week. So, not travel stories, but stories nonetheless, and I hope you enjoyed them. Now, I think we're going to move on to the second part of this podcast, where I'm going to share some of the insane, crazy, helpful, whatever random stuff that you guys have emailed into me. If you guys want to reach out and get in touch and possibly have your story read out on the podcast, you can reach out via my email, which is helloaliciadione@gmail.com. Hello, spelt the old-fashioned way, and Alicia Dione is ALICIADIONE@gmail.com. If you need that spelling again, it's just the name of my channel. Stick the word hello in front of it, and you're good to go, and hopefully your amazing stories will reach me, and also you'll get a chance to possibly be read out on the podcast. We are here to share and laugh at whatever experience that has gone on. I hope personally that the story of me nearly passing out in a meeting room brought you nothing but hilarity and joy. I'm not looking for sympathy. Please just enjoy that stupidity for what it was. Okay, first email. Hello! That is literally how this email opens. When I was 13, me and my family spent 3 weeks in Indonesia. There are 2 stories from this trip, and I thought I'd write in and share them with you. Oh, how nice of you. Thank you very much. Okay. Number 1. I like the way this email is structured. It's very easy to comprehend. I like a good structured email. Okay. Number 1. That time I got held hostage by an orangutan. I'm sorry. What? Oh, okay, I'll just read on. In Sumatra, one of the larger islands of Indonesia, we visited a protected part of the rainforest which had a haven and sort of sanctuary for orangutans. They had a feeding station that some of the orangutans would visit, and so they would bring tourists there to get them to see them in the wild. One of the mother orangutans, complete with baby attached, arrived late, and the others had all finished the food. In protest, she grabbed hold of me, long arms all the way around my waist, and wouldn't release me until they provided her with more food. Oh my god, how old are you in this story? 13. Okay. My dad was freaking out. Well, I fucking hope so. Thinking that he was going to have to wrestle this super strong and muscly creature to save me, whilst my mum was saying, take a photo. Oh, I like that dynamic. That's funny. Luckily, this wasn't the first time that an orangutan had done this to a tourist, so our guides knew what to do. What? Oh, I've got to feel like the health and safety of that is not on tip top. I love that your dad is freaking out and contemplating wrestling a monkey to get you back, and all your mum wants is a photo. I love that. I feel like they must be a very solid couple that just balance each other out in all the best ways. And I'm really glad that one of them was concerned for your safety, because to be honest, if I was, I don't know, I don't have any children, but if I took a 13-year-old on holiday with me and they got kidnapped by an orangutan, let me just quickly Google a photo of an orangutan. Let me just make sure I'm picturing it correctly in my head. Holy shit. Okay, for those of you who are listening and you're not 100% sure on which kind of monkey an orangutan is, which, could be none of you because you're probably all much cleverer than me. It's the giant fucking orange one. Like, the one in Jungle Book that dances with Mowgli and is like, whoopie-doo-doo-doo, I wanna be like you, be-doo-be-doo, I wanna walk like you, talk like you. Yeah, that one. Scooby-doo-be-doo-boo. Sorry. Once you get me started, you just can't stop me. Anyway, yes, the giant orange ones. Oh my god. I have to say though, hats off to the mummy orangutan, right? If I rocked up to somewhere for dinner and they were like, sorry, all out of food, and I was there with my infant child, I have to say I don't think I'd be above taking a 13-year-old girl hostage. And in this situation, I'm not necessarily a monkey. I think I'd do it as a human. Food is too important. It's just, and I can't imagine how much crazier my need for food would be if I was also looking after a newborn. I honestly think that would be a slippery slope for me. I already depend on food way too much, but whatever. Life's for living and eating, if you ask me. Okay, now, I'm only halfway through this email, so let's keep moving on. The second story is titled, "That Time My Dad Ended Up on an In-Flight Magazine with 2 High-Level Indonesian Politicians." This is the guy who was thinking of wrestling a monkey. Maybe he belonged on there with the politicians. Maybe, he'd be a great candidate for Indonesians. Maybe they should think about putting him forwards. On Java, the long, thin Indonesian island that, oh God, how do you say that? Jakarta, the capital, is situated on, we stopped at a cool rustic hotel near Mount Bromo, brackets, a volcano. I am sorry if I am butchering that pronunciation. I don't know how it happened, but the staff at the hotel spent the evening dressing us up in traditional Indonesian dress and makeup, along with a group of Dutch girls also staying there. Okay, little sus so far, a little bit suspicious. We were put onto a minibus. Okay, this sounds like a trafficking story. Should I be reading ahead? Should I be worried? If you got out of the orangutan's arms, I'm sure. I mean, you have access to a computer to send this to me, so I'm assuming you're not in captivity. Let's read on and find out. Okay, we were put onto a minibus and taken to a square with a big open gazebo and sat on the second row to watch some festive dancing and performance of some speeches. Oh, okay, that sounds like a nice evening. It was the night before a cultural tradition where they made offerings to a... It was made the night before a cultural tradition where they made offerings to the volcano, and so all of this was related to that. I am not laughing, interjection. I am not laughing at them making offerings to the volcano. I'm laughing that you are tourists that rocked up, they dressed you up, and then drove you in a minivan to the volcano. Is this going to be an escape story? Because at the minute it sounds like you are Sid the Sloth and you are becoming the Fire King. If you get that reference, good. If you don't, watch Ice Age. Okay, it was related to that. Anyway, we watched this thing and then were all brought to another venue where they had food and drink and networking, apparently. My dad got mistaken for some kind of European diplomat or minister by the bigwigs there, including the governor of Java and the Indonesian minister of tourism. The press took photos and so on. The night ended and we went back to the hotel, ready for a short night's sleep before hiking up to Mount Bromo for sunrise the next morning, and that was the end of that. These holidays with your parents sound insane. Do you think someone really rich is writing in? Do you think that I actually have a diplomat at the other end of this? And where are these people taking you? Okay, let's keep going. For sunrise the next morning, and that was the end of that. Except my uncle who lived in Jakarta, that's wrong. No. How do you pronounce an R and a T that follow each other? Okay, guys, I found a problem with this being a travel podcast. I can't pronounce words. Okay, Jakarta. Except my uncle, who lived in Jakarta at the time, on a flight for business a few months later, was browsing the in-flight magazine and happened upon a picture of his big brother dressed in purple Indonesian traditional garments and sandwiched by 2 top-level Indonesian politicians. What a story. That is hilarious. Can you imagine that? Thinking, that was a nice evening, and then your big brother calls you up a few months later and goes, hey bro, why are you on the cover of an in-flight magazine for Indonesian politicians? Thank you so much for sending in this email. Oh my God, there's more. 2 stories and a cautionary tale. Okay, we'll do this cautionary tale and then we'll wrap up the podcast for today. This is such an amazing email, and if you want to get your story read out on this podcast, you know where to find me. I will also pop my email in the description bar below this podcast. Right, let's find out. I have a third tale that's more cautionary than fun. Oh, okay. I got caught in a riptide in Bali and got rescued by a local fisherman. I was swimming against it for ages and was glad it was me as I was the stronger swimmer out of my family, but it was pretty tiring. I don't know what I would have done if the local hadn't offered me a lift back to shore. I've since learned more about riptides and know better what to do, but if you're going to swim in the sea out of your depth, make sure you know what to do if you get caught in a riptide. Thank you so much for the podcast. It's wonderful to listen to, and I can't wait to listen to your podcast next week. Oh, well, thank you so much, listener. And yes, good advice on the riptides, 100%. And I'm glad you got picked up by that fisherman, because without that fisherman, we wouldn't have been able to listen to all of your amazing stories that you've written in to us about. Thank you so much. It is scary when you think about it, because every beach is different and every body of water is different with its own depths and its own riptides, its own currents, and different days or moon cycles or seasons can change all of that. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you're planning on going for a little bit of a dip, especially if you're listening to this and you're thinking of going for a dip in Bali, maybe check out where your local fishermen are before you go for your dip, just to make sure that you have a rescue mission in place, if you are so to need it. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I had the best time and I was so excited to receive your emails about your traveling stories. Thank you so much to our star writer of the day who wrote in to tell us those 2 stories and 1 cautionary tale. And if you want to be featured on the podcast, the email address is in the description bar below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Watch out for the next podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel whilst you're here. Give this podcast a like and have an amazing rest of your week. Bye.